You're listening to a Rock Candy podcast.
You are now entering Magnified Studios. Welcome.
Coming to you from Magnified Studios, Magnified Pod presents It's Hard to Find a Podcast, covering your favorite indie bands from the 90s Christian alternative scene. Put your tape decks on record. I'm Andrew.
I'm John.
This is our podcast, and that's it. So before we started recording, we were discussing about how some of our Patreon folks are disappointed with the some of the changing beginning of the pod, and how I don't say this is our food lion anymore. Mm-hmm. And you know, I feel like it made sense for like the pop punk, skate punk season.
Yeah.
But like people coming in who are like, oh, Pedro and Lion, I like them. And then we're talking about Pedro the Lion, talking about a food lion.
Pedro the food lion.
Pedro the food lion. I don't know. I to be honest, I miss the food lion as well, but
we all miss the food lion.
We all miss the food lion.
This will always be our food lion. All right.
Yes. It's regardless of us saying
it's implied.
There is always an implied food lion.
Another brand new sentence, right?
Yes, there's always an implied food lion is now the tagline for Magnified Pod.
Food lion. There's always an implied food lion.
We'll pitch that at the next food lion board meeting. Yes. So John, speaking of changes and new things, something that I haven't experienced for over 2 years is a cold.
Yeah,
and
sucks.
So that's in my own head. I sound different. I'm not sure how I'm coming across.
Some sniffles in there.
There's some sniffles in there.
Little gravelly in there.
Yeah, I did pre-unwrap my lozenges because I'm a professional. Right. I'm not going to be that guy. No.
Well, now you're doing it though.
I know. Shit. Suffice it to say, John, the cough drops are on standby.
Okay.
The tea is consumed.
Got a little spicy honey in there.
The hot takes are locked and loaded.
Hot honey, hot takes.
Hot honey, hot takes. That's already a podcast pretty much on hot tea, hot takes on the Rock Candy Network. So yes. We can't. I feel like we're encroaching on.
Yeah.
We're encroaching on somebody else's territory.
It was just the tip of the cap to our Rock Candy colleagues.
There we go.
I'm sorry for your sickness.
I'm not down with it. Ooh, wah,
I'm not.
Local Chicago legends.
Disturbed. Get them on the pod.
Disturbed. When did you first hear of Control by Pedro and Lion?
Down with the podcast, season 5.
I'm podding with you.
Is that good? So
it's certainly something.
It is the thing that was said. As people are not wearing their masks, and more kids in school not doing that, we're getting sick again, and it's not COVID, and that's good. But
here's the thing though, I'm still wearing my masks out.
Yeah, but other people aren't.
I know, and
you get those little particles getting in your holes.
I don't talk about hole particles. I'm not
not here for that.
Not here for the hole particles.
Doesn't help you.
No, I'm just. I don't know about you, John, but I'm one of those people that when I get sick, I'm baby.
You are baby.
I am baby, and it's like because it happens so infrequently, and I'm just like, I'm sick.
I mean, that's already where your foreness is primed to receive some like, I need to feel Like
I'm
live in
I'm
this
sick.
sadness
No one
for
is
a while.
no one is as sick as me right now.
Yeah, no one's ever been through this.
Believe me,
remember-
no one has ever been this sick before.
As sick as me.
The
so sick
sickness
as your
that I
dad.
have. Oh God.
Oh, I'm down with. Many people are saying they're down with.
Many are saying that the sickness I have, they're down
They're
with it,
down
but
with
they're
it.
not. They are lying crooks.
We are all over the place this episode.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you feel better. I hope the tea helps you. I don't
Ooh.
have tea. I
Ooh.
have a different kind of refreshment.
What do you have over there? That is a very vibrant blue can.
Yes. Well, it's not a particularly weird beer tonight, but it's a collab between a couple local breweries near me. We got Microphone Brewing, which is sort of like a punk rock and roll brewery, and Roaring Table Brewing, and they collaborated on this Roaring Microphone Baltic Porter. So I'm guessing I will enjoy it. But yeah, man, I hope you're back to old flames again and not just tea with spicy honey soon.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe my body's way of saying, hey, why don't you have a few less old flames?
That's true.
I'm just get a little hydrated, and then we'll talk.
Well, the good news is nothing makes you feel better than Pedro the Lion's Control.
When you're feeling down, when you're having a tough time, when
just throw that on repeatedly.
When your depression is creeping in, just throw on yet another album that features a spousal murder.
Hey, you're gonna die. We're all gonna die.
We're all gonna die. Everything turns to shit.
Yep. Anyway, this beer is delicious.
There needs to be like an Indian summer wheat ale or something like that.
Ooh,
or
what
or
beer invokes climate change the most? Like unnecessarily warm or something.
Yeah, something. What says I'm super wealthy and lay by the pool all day?
Right. Yeah. Hard to say. Probably like some sort of hard seltzer or something.
Yes, it's true.
Yes, much to get into this week. Which we should say, mentioned at the end of last episode that we'd be talking to Brandon Vetter, director of the Bazan documentary Strange Negotiations. That's not happening. It will happen. It's just not happening this week. But this week, that means we do get to talk about Control.
Yes.
And we were talking about this a little before we started recording. This album, huge for me, huge for most Pedro fans. An album that's we were saying difficult for us to choose a top three because there's so many great songs. It's also like very heavy musically and lyrically, lots to get into. So I'm a little like daunted by this conversation because it's been a record that has like loomed over for me for 20 years. So I hope I do it justice.
It's another one of those albums that I only sort of listened to when it came out, probably only because of the controversy around it, the controversy, if you will.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, my heart wasn't prepared for it. So
how many cum mentions?
Not enough, if you ask me.
There's more than ever on this record for Pedro. So.
In terms of the number of times Pedro has said "come" on his records before, this is exactly 100% more mentions of "come."
Yes, lots to get into. Should also say on the Pedro front, I didn't know how to transition out of that.
No, we'll get into Cum Corner a little bit later.
I don't want to go to Cum Corner. It doesn't sound like a good place to be.
No one wants to go to Cum Corner, John.
You just end up there.
You end up there like you're like Jerry Seinfeld. Like, how did I get here? What's the deal with Cum Corner? I wasn't here.
It was a Cum Corner,
here.
Jerry. She put me in a Cum Corner. A Cum Corner.
A Cum Corner.
Oh boy, this is tough. Is this good? Do people like this?
Is this good? God.
This is Control.
Is this
like
anything? Is this
Pedro's
anything?
Biggest record. We're talking Cum. We're talking, Honey. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, the new Pedro album doesn't have any mentions of Cum, but it does talk about drums. The song. Yeah, that's good. First drum set, which Bangs is on Havasu. The music video came out for it this week, directed by Cody Cloud, who's like a long-term collaborator of Bazan's, and it rules. So check that video out if you haven't seen it yet. The Pedro tour is underway. We will both be seeing him shortly and reporting back. So yeah, get your Pedro tickets, everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to see if I can talk to him or.
Hey, do you want to join me in the Cum Corner? I've got a podcast about you. I'll be like, yeah, cool. I gotta go now.
Hey, can we so on our last podcast we talked about the Cum Corner. Can you say this is David Bazan and this is the Cum Corner?
He'll definitely want to introduce that segment, I think.
Hey, who are these nice security guys? These friends of
Oh,
yours?
cool. You guys want to come to the Cum Corner too? All right, see you, David. Yeah, what are we doing?
What are we doing outside? This is weird. This is where the show is.
Oh boy.
Anyway, this is.
I hope he listens to this and decidedly is like, well, I was gonna maybe offer something,
Oh,
but now
no.
we're definitely got nothing to do with them.
Oh no.
But there are other people who have opinions, not just us.
Yes.
Any voicemails to check out?
Ooh, sure do. We have a voicemail line. 872-762-4763, 8727-MAGPOD, or send us your voice memos if you prefer. But we do have some Danny Leary voicemails from last week that we didn't get to. So figured get to them now.
Hi, this is Danny again, and I was calling to add to my own how I first heard of Pedro the Lion, just in case it does or doesn't validate any points from that first voicemail. Not validate, but we'll see. So I got into Pedro the Lion pretty early, like 99 or 2000, when I discovered the existence of what was then called emo, which is now just like post-hardcore and like indie rock with punk leanings, you know, not theatrical, dramatic pop punk. So I discovered emo, and Pedro the Lion back then in like 99, 2000 was on blogs and lists of like greatest emo bands. So I'm like, okay, let me look into Pedro the Lion. I'm like, oh, their first thing's on Tooth and Nail. Oh, it says here they're Christian. Cool. I'll check them out. So I only really listened to Pedro the Lion from the whole EP through Winners Never Quit. And then after, you know, having listened through those 4 releases like a ton, I was like, am I actually enjoying this? Like there's a number of songs, like especially because you guys didn't really love all the peppy songs. And the peppy songs on It's Hard to Find a Friend are like my favorite ones because they feel like a relief. And then by the time Control came out, I was actually out. I was like, especially with the things I was hearing about Control and having nothing to do with like religiously or whatever, just like hearing it was more intense. Same reason maybe Andrew doesn't like horror movies. I was like, I can't do this again. I checked it, and I don't think I've ever actually listened to Control because of that. And I listened to Achilles Heel a little bit, and then in 2005 is the only time I ever saw a David Bazan solo show. Only time I ever saw David Bazan live. 2005, I was living in Orlando, and I went to a solo show of his at the Social in Orlando, and he does the Q&A stuff. And I can't remember what song it was, but at some point he mentions Jesus in a song, but he changed it to Jeebus. And someone who was clearly upset at his leanings away from Christianity, their Q&A question was like, why did you say Jeebus there? Like thinking like, do you hate God now? Are you not a Christian anymore? And David's answer was just like, that was a Simpsons reference. Homer, I think it's Homer Simpson. It's kind of like, he's like pondering on it. I think it was Homer Simpson said Jeebus once. And so it was like, yeah, good times.
Yeah, that sounds about right. As far as an interaction at a Bazan show. I'm like,
yeah, get
making a joke and
get a stupid question.
Right.
You
know? I too remember when he changed, I don't even remember what song that is, but he changed Jesus to Jeebus. And like, as much as I appreciate a Simpsons reference, I too at the time was a little bit like, oh man, now you're just like, Actually, I think it was Slow and Steady. What does he say about Jesus in that song? When I get to heaven, he's like, Jeebus and the angels. And I remember being like, the song means something to me. And you're just making fun of it now. But no, I think he's having a laugh.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to Control, I mean, if you were on board for Winners Never Quit, I don't know why you wouldn't be on board for Control.
I mean, I guess
Very
I
much in the
get
same vein. I mean, obviously 100% more cum references and some swearing, but like, you know,
it
it's
is
dark.
It's dark. I get the idea of it being more intense, which it's heavier in terms of music and maybe like wallowing a little more in the Winners Never Quit tells a depressing story. This one deals a little more with just like depressing existence a bit more. So I guess I could get how you would feel that way. It's not everybody's cup of tea. I understand why you wouldn't be drawn to that, but I don't know. For these sad boys, he always did the trick.
We got some Dustin Kent.
Hey dudes, it's Dustin in St. Louis. I am really digging this Pedro review to this point. I first heard of Pedro when I went to college. As a young punk and ska kid, one of my buddies at Greenville had introduced me to Pedro, and this dude later became like my best friend. He's like a brother to me. He's a huge, massive Pedro Bazan fan. And while I've always really enjoyed the faster, more upbeat, angsty stuff, there was something about, Bazan's lyrics and music, and it kind of came to me at the perfect point in my life. I, just started questioning my faith and what I believed. And there was something about these lyrics that just resonated with me. I understood them. They made sense, and the music is so well written and put together. It's just hard to deny it. And so I quickly became a big Pedro and Bazan fan myself. And by the way, if you guys don't do a review on Cursor Branches, I'm going to scream. It's such a good album, and anybody that's really had any sort of fallout with, faith and religion, I don't know how that album doesn't just move you almost to tears. If not, it moves you to tears every time you listen to it. But yeah, I'm really loving the review so far. Both albums are great and incredibly important to me, and I'm really looking forward to Control. That's probably my favorite Pedro album, so I'm really looking forward to that. And real quick side note, you guys had a great interview, and Main Street Cafe and Denise was brought up, and one of my bands in college, we had actually played there a couple times. She was such a sweetheart of a lady, and we really appreciated our time there, and what she was doing was just being a good human, and I always really appreciated her quite a bit. So random, small world that we would have run into some similar people. But anyways, thanks for everything that you guys are doing, and looking forward to more Pedro reviews. As always, MagPod for life.
Yes.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Dustin. Dustin, by the way, designer of the Werewolf Reclamation Project and Phantom Cackler.
Yes.
Designs that we have up on some merch.
Yes.
In our shop right now, magnifiedpod.storeenvy.com. They are incredible. Dustin is very talented.
Yes.
So thank you for that. Want to hear your band? I feel like you'd mentioned that before, but yeah, send in your band.
Yeah, man, Dustin, send in your band. Send in for new listeners. Like every once in a while, we will feature people's bands who are like that, call in, and if it's relevant to like sort of the vein of what we do. Like, did you have a ska band? Did you have a pop punk band, or
do you have a depressing emo band?
A depressing emo band? Hell yeah. Yeah, that Denise lady sounds
rad.
Sounded pretty rad. I mean, not too many people can say they had a chance to have like a casserole with Under Oath.
No, that rules. No, Denise sounds awesome. I love this idea of this old lady keeping the hardcore scene alive in KC. Is that where it was? I think so.
Sounds right.
So yeah, it's not unlike Heart and Soul, which we've invoked here for the sort of like Chicago burbs scene kids, but there was no Denise handing out casseroles. So
No, just handing out problematic theology.
yeah, some Israel flags maybe.
And did you find a compilation of Heart and Soul worship music recently?
Yes, I did. You're referring to Sold Out,
the Sold Out
youth group worship band. You didn't want the CD, which I found weird. So I'll hold on to it for you for a while.
Yeah, it was. Hold on, it was Sold Out live worship, and it has some fingers holding a burning match on it, which is
sounds right.
So cool. And then under the live worship, it says igniting the passion of a generation. It's like, all right, guys.
You got fire, you got ignite, you got passion, you got generation. I mean, this is true 90s youth group bingo.
Oh
here.
Man, yeah.
We have a couple mutual friends featured on that album, by the way.
Ooh.
Talk about that off pod.
Okay, we don't want to like
their spot.
accidentally shame them.
Anyway, much clamoring for Curse Your Branches to be covered in some way, Andrew. As I think we said we're going to cover it on the Patreon. No, discography deep dive of Pedro / Bazan is really complete without that somewhere in there. So we'll get it on there. Dustin, we can maybe send you a link to that one so that you can have that. You've done work for us. We can send that to you. But yeah, maybe if there's enough clamoring for it to be on the main feed, we can consider that too. But anyway.
Yeah, John and I did some work ahead of the release to try and like actually have some sort of a structure to the season where we're like planning when things are recorded and when just like trying to have things, so we're we'll see if we can fit it in. We've done double records before, so
it's true.
Not that we prefer that. The Rudy Librarian, Brian Canberra.
Okay, one, I just need to know, what season will Derek Webb fit on? Because I feel like Derek Webb and David Bazan are so much in the same vein, and I feel like Derek is one of those that I really want to hear y'all cover at some point. I don't know if you would cover his old Caedmon's Call stuff or if you would just dive straight into the Derek Webb discography, but I would really love to hear y'all cover him. Okay, secondly, two, I've realized I forgot to introduce myself again. I'm not very good at this, I guess. It's Brian, the Rudy Librarian. And then three, which would really be two if I had introduced myself at one or whatever, is I have to take a second and really just cheer, weep for joy. I don't know. I'm so glad that you guys talked about Slow and Steady Win the Race the way that you did. That song to me is also my absolute favorite Bazan, Pedro the Lion song. And it gets me every time. The part that gets me, I know you guys really highlighted that last quote about deserving, which also hits me. But man, the part where he's just like, she asked me where my brother is, and I said, I don't know, and I ate. Like basically just the apathy, the sheer apathy to how well other people are doing when you're prioritizing yourself is baffling to me about Christianity sometimes. And I'm definitely still a Christian. I love my faith. It means so much to me, but I just don't get how we can turn our backs so frequently on people who are hurting, on the immigrants, on the disenfranchised, on the LGBTQ, on Black lives, on women, just over and over and over again. It's so antithetical to the gospel to me. And that's part of why that song is going to probably remain one of my absolute favorites, because it addresses that in a way that sort of makes me proud and sort of makes me sad because it's so true. MagPod for life.
I love these that's 2 weeks. No, Brian has shared these very like emotional,
Yeah.
statements that are beautiful, and then ends with "Bagpod for life," which I
Yeah.
certainly appreciate. Thank you, Brian.
So, Brian, we always got you. If you forget to introduce yourself,
Yeah, we got you.
we got you. Don't worry.
We know everybody knows the Rudy Librarian.
Second, yes, slow and steady. There's a lot going on in that song, and what you're talking about, Brian, the shifting in priorities of Christian evangelicalism is something that is addressed quite a bit in the documentary Strange Negotiations
Mhm.
that we will be discussing eventually, and kind of during the rise of Trump. And Bazan talks quite a bit about the different things, the different idols that
Mhm.
evangelicals have created. And I do think that there are a lot of things that have become idolatry for evangelicals, and power is one of them.
Mhm.
At the same time, persecution, there's like persecution
Yes.
complex. They're like, it's the stuff that you're talking about, he's like this sort of the self focus. They're
Mhm.
so everything has become so centered on self,
Right.
that there's no room for the gospel when when it's all about like, I don't know, I have my cake, I
Right.
have my tea and cake, I made it to grandma's house. You're saying I have to be concerned about somebody else too now? Oh, gosh, where does Jesus ever talk oh, like literally entire gospels? Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, really, is that really that important?
Right.
So it's in that same theme just continues very much onto control. The focusing, thinking about oneself, selfish actions, the justification of behaviors, and obviously not as much of a Christian message necessarily strung throughout control as it is Winners Never Quit, but still very apt comparison of those two records.
Yeah.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think that was really well said, Brian. And the kind of successful metaphor of the song that you're alluding to, as I mentioned last week, escaped me a little bit when I was younger, and still enjoyed the song, but couldn't quite get a handle on it, which I'm glad that you raised this again this week, because I meant to talk about this last week. This is going to be a new ongoing segment of me asking stupid questions at Bazan shows, because I distinctly remember in like 2005, he's like, does anybody have any questions? And I was like, is slow and steady wins the race like a metaphor? And I think that was literally what I said.
Oh,
because I think I
God.
listened to it and I was like, I think there might be more to this than than what's on the surface. There might be like a metaphor going on here.
Oh my God.
And I can just like
It
look
hurts.
back and hear the like, laughter, stifled laughter, otherwise, of people around me being like, come on, man. And he very graciously was like, yeah, it's about a guy who's an asshole who thinks he's not, or something like that, which is like, again, there's more to it than that. But I was like, yeah, right on. I thought it was. So anyway, props to you for understanding its complexity before I did, perhaps. But yes, it is, as I said last week, my favorite Pedro song. I'm glad that you love it so much too. Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, Andrew, about the focus on the self is well said as well. I mean, that's the result of a expression of faith that's completely centered on a transactional relationship that only has to do with personal salvation. And I was just thinking about this today as I drove by a church sign, and I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something like God changed the world with 3 nails or something like that. There was a little more to it than that.
Sure.
And I was like, to reduce everything that Jesus came to the earth to do and did to 3 nails is just like, boy, there's a lot of gospel that we're not getting with that reduction. Anyway, that's why that song rules. So much to talk about.
Yeah, that is a bummer way to, look. I understand the importance and the significance of the crucifixion and what the role it plays in the salvation story, but if everything that you remember about and talk about Jesus is that he died and not literally everything leading up to the reason that the state executed him,
right,
then that you're this guy who's like, I'm going to receive a mansion. I deserve to be here in heaven. You're missing the point.
Yeah.
Try again.
When I climax, it's like Jesus and the angels welcoming into heaven.
David, is that a metaphor?
Or do you really think Jesus is greeting you when you when you come?
Hey, David, is this song part of Come Corner? I
didn't want to come back to Come, but I guess I had to. Look, it's all over this album, all right?
Oof. Another thing, Brian, you mentioned Derek Webb, and I do think that there are some similarities in the Venn diagram of Derek Webb and David Bazan. There's a lot of overlap, coming from a noted Christian act to publicly deconstructing and getting his music getting more liberal and progressive as he was writing it. And I don't know, I guess I definitely was listening to some Derek Webb in college as he was starting to write his more left-leaning stuff, and I was like, hell yeah, this is the kind of church I want. This is the kind of Christian and the kind of Jesus that I believe in, this sort of this radical Jesus. And I don't know, what do you think, John?
We've talked about like the possibility of a folk season. I don't know that would be at the top of our list for next few seasons, but there are several artists like that who've been mentioned. I think the idea of covering him would certainly be interesting and is like a worthy name for the list. But folks have also mentioned, we've talked about Mike Knott, whether Michael Knott would fit the season. I think that too, probably a little more of like a folk season, maybe. I mean, he's kind of his own thing, but he might still make it on the season at some point. Folks have also raised Semler, who's obviously like a much more recent addition to the sort of world we talk about, but she would be fascinating to talk about too. So I feel like there's a bunch of sort of singer-songwritery artists.
Kevin Max.
Sure, Kevin Max.
I mean, he's all doesn't really
bleeps and bloops.
Bleeps and bloops. Maybe we could do it like a whole like challenging the church season. Artists that are like challenging the church to try and get better and to do better.
That sounds interesting. Maybe we could do a little mini season between bigger seasons or something.
Sure.
But these are all great ideas. We're always very happy to hear suggestions and do consider them, even if things don't always shake out that way. But yeah, we will consider that. Thanks for raising that.
Yeah, and on that note, we should probably just cover Lucy Dacus. Just get her on the pod.
Sounds good to me.
Oof, what's her deal?
Home patio.
Her deal is I think she's like 25 or something. So
yeah. What else we got?
Oh, so we got an email from our boy Bobby G, Robert Gay.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. We haven't heard from him in a while. He says, "Hey, John and Andrew, I'm catching up on It's Hard to Find a Pod and loving it. It reminded me of a recording that might be worth sharing. Back in 2007, 2008, my roommate Jack Wittes and I recorded this cover of Hull by Pedro the Lion. Let's check it out."
Ooh. Different. Kind of dig that. Bleepy bloopy.
A hole that big I'd never seen before, in the tummy of a good old boy who always wanted more. And just yesterday I saw him satisfied. It seems he met the whole fixin' man, much to his surprise. But are you for real, Mr. Whole Fixin' Man? You fix my friend, can you fix me? Mr. Whole Fixin' Man, I'm broken as a boy can be, so how about fixing me?
Some strings in there. Hell yeah, Bobby G.
Very nice.
That to me is like, if someone told me, like, what would Pedro the Lion sound like if he came out of Nashville? Like that.
Yeah. Robert, very talented dude.
Yes.
Check out his music at robertmgay.bandcamp.com. But yeah, that was nice. I like that. It's didn't have really enough Michigan J Frog for me. Could have used a little more
A little bit more.
Hey, Mr. Whole Fixin' Man.
More tip of the hat, more cane,
to you,
more cane
Robert.
gesturing.
Yeah. Good stuff though.
Great stuff. Thanks for sharing, Bobby G. Anyway, we appreciate you guys leaving your voicemails, calling in, giving your thoughts, your thoughtful thoughts, sharing your music.
Yes.
That's what this community is all about.
That's right.
The camaraderie, the friendship, sharing of art, sharing of takes, sharing of wins and losses. But John,
good transition.
I think we need to share some wins.
I agree. We are now in the winner's circle. I got a winner to share this week, Andrew.
Let's hear it.
In order to spare your voice a little bit, and because I'm a little revved up about this one, I'll go first.
Okay.
My winner, Andrew, this week is a little something called Jenny's Everything Bagel Ice Cream.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. Now, Macmillan's Dictionary defines unadventurous as not interested in trying anything new. And I just want to say, I got dragged a bit online for enjoying delightful Jenny's Everything Bagel Ice Cream. I got dragged for talking on the pod about my dill aquavit, which is delicious, and I feel somewhat vindicated by the people who've ordered aquavit and enjoyed it since then. I'm just saying, I enjoy a weird beer. Look, we only go around this beautiful blue marble one time, okay? And while we're here, let's have a little adventure, baby. Let's try some weird ice creams. Let's try some weird liquor and beer. You don't have to drag old Johnny just because I like some adventure in my life, all right? And I'm not talking about jumping out of airplanes or riding motorcycles. I like eating and drinking. So we got to try some fun stuff, all right? You enjoy what you enjoy. I enjoy what I enjoy. Just listen to what I have to say. You're going to like it. Just at least try it, okay? Jenny's Everything Bagel Ice Cream, you won.
Merriam-Webster defines condescending as showing or characterized by patronizing or superior attitude towards others.
Oh, Andrew's drinking tea. Oh, tea's so weird. Shut up.
Actually, I am. If you want to be a little bit, I'm gonna come across as like a superior douchebag myself.
Actually,
I'm drinking a Hoplark. Are you familiar with Hoplark?
Did we talk about this last week?
Did we talk about it last week? I don't remember.
I think so. Sounds good.
Yeah, the sparkling hop water. It's craft brewed water with hops in it, and it's like too expensive, but it's so delicious.
Sounds pretty great.
It is great. And when you're trying to not drink as much, it's nice to have something that tastes like beer but isn't giving you the old fat face.
I know about that. That was kind of that was not a true rant. I'm just saying, listen, your boy likes to try some weird stuff.
John,
I encourage all of us to try some weird stuff here, now and then. Trust me, okay? It's good. The bagel gravel's good.
Bagel gravel is an interesting marketing technique. But like, look, if I get dragged in various ways. You get dragged for your unique and we'll say
Adventurous attitude.
adventurous palette.
Yeah.
And you know, in the way that you pronounced the ska band the Dingies. You know,
we don't need to talk about that anymore. I couldn't believe it that actually the fact that somebody brought that up, whatever group that was in,
yeah,
like
old school Tooth and Nail on Facebook, I think.
It made me feel vindicated a little
It
bit.
did.
Because I was like, listen, we don't all know it's dingy. Some of us think it's dinghies, okay? Anyway, we're not talking about dinghies. We're talking about
Jenny's ice cream.
Yeah, we're done with that. But just a few other winners to shout out real quick.
Yeah.
Last week you mentioned being psyched for the Linda Linda's record coming out.
Yeah.
I'm not here to steal your winners if that's one for you, but I will just say briefly that the record I think lives up to the hype. Very enjoyable. Wet Leg, a band we've talked about this year. Very into them. They've been releasing singles for a while, but they put out their first LP on the same day. That also rules. I'm saving a little spot on my top 10 for it. Maybe we'll see. And Pup, I talked about going to see Pup.
Yes.
Or that I was going to go see them soon. And I went to see them and it ruled. It was wonderful. Did I talk about this already? Who knows? Everything is a blur. Wouldn't it be nice if everything were meaningless, but it's so meaningful, including going to see Pup live. It was my first time seeing them. It really lived up to the hype. I had a lot of fun. So those are my other winners I'll briefly shout out.
Man, those videos that you were showing, everybody was so pumped to be there, and they sounded great. They had a great energy.
They said it was the third biggest show they've ever played, I think. So
wow. I think we did talk about the shows that we were going to see,
right,
but not so much in the context of the winner's circle,
right?
So because I did talk about how I was going to see Ministry, and
not going to end up in your winner's circle.
Not going to end up in my winner's circle this week.
Melvins?
I was texting you while I was at the show, while the Melvins were playing, and I was just like, this is not great. The venue we were at, it was it sounded all, I was like, are they being blue mixed right now? Because this is tough.
I've never been there.
Yeah,
I'm surprised though. I feel like that would be a bigger venue for both of those bands, but maybe I've never been there. Maybe it's big. I don't know.
Yeah, but I did text you to let you know that a Lorne Michaels lookalike in jean shorts was serving shots at the bar.
Jorts Lorne Michaels sounds like a Conan character.
Yeah, Jorts Lorne Michaels. Does anybody need some shots?
Anybody need another shot over here?
I'm pouring some shots of liquor.
That's a real good one. I swear.
I've never tried to do a Lorne Michaels before in my life, but
nailed it.
Anyway, so but my
Control is my favorite Pedro album.
Everybody says that Pedro is sad, but he's actually, if you listen, he's hopeful.
Good take, Lauren.
We are going to get him on, anyway. No, I was going to get him on Saturday Night Live. Anyway,
that'd be great.
My winner this week is a dude named Mike Grant. Never heard of him? Well, that's because you gotta go to Black End Tattoo, and get him to give you some dope ink, because he gave me my latest tattoo. I got a Hams can tattooed on my left tricep.
It looks so good, man.
I'm so happy with it. And he did some little alterations to, because this isn't like exactly a can that exists, but I wanted to have the crown logo that they have, that's sort of like a crown that's actually waves with like little trees in between it. I wanted to have that in with like the blue can, and and he like got the color.
Yeah.
So everybody was coming by and looking at it, and they're like, "Oh man, this is so great! That looks so cool! You really nailed the colors." And then he was telling me, he's like, "I'm worried that people are going to be like think I'm like the hyper realism guy," and like, but like he just executed it so well, and
It looks great.
And he's done like every piece that I've gotten done since I moved to the Twin Cities. He's done. And I'm like, do you have anything that you're working on that you because I'm like, I want to get a skull something, because he's like really into, like, skulls are like a specific thing that he like does really well and he really enjoys doing.
It's
and
cool.
So he was showing me a piece that he was working on that hasn't been claimed yet, and I'm like, it's like this Grim Reaper with like, with a skull, and I think it like had like a crown of thorns situation going on.
Ooh.
I'm like, this is metal as hell.
There's a lot happening there.
There's a lot happening, and
Get that broken bones tat.
Oof, man. And so I'm like, yeah, I want him to do something there. But so Mike, awesome dude. And for the first time in 2 years of him doing work for me, I finally made it to his Instagram.
Ah, nice. Yeah, he should be proud. What was his reaction when you said hams can? Was he like, of course, a popular request? Or was he like, oh, fascinating?
No, I don't think he's ever done one. I don't think the people in the shop were just like, there's somebody that's like, oh man, it's such a cool idea. And then Mike was like, oh, maybe I should get a high life. And I'm like, I don't know, man.
If you want that on your body, I guess.
If you're a high life guy, like, I guess. But but we were just giving each other shit. But
regardless of the taste of it, the hams can that's a thing of beauty. You want that on your body. High life, I don't want to drink it as much as hams, and I don't want it on my body as much as hams.
No, that's and something I said on my Instagram is that like, that some people might look at this and see, oh, you got a beer tattoo, and I'm like, no, this is a Minnesota tattoo.
That's right.
Like it's, to me, like, it was when I moved here, it became this sort of like, I'd like now forever associate it with familiarizing myself with the state.
Right.
Now I like live in St. Paul, where Hams was birthed, and there's I live right near an area where there's like a waterfall named after the Hams family, the Ham family, and
the Ham fam.
And so it's like, it just feels like a part of my experience, and it's delicious to me. And I still,
hey, you wrote the song of the summer about it.
I did write the song of the summer of 2020 that they still haven't acknowledged, but whatever.
Between the tattoo and the hit song you wrote for them, we got to get some free cases at least.
Where's my 30 pack?
Yeah, you should be able to walk into whatever facility and get yourself a free hams for life.
just,
I think
just show my tricep and be like, boom, where's my swag?
Like, ham song guys here.
And I got an enamel pin on my jacket and everything.
Dang. Come on, hams.
I got a piece of original Hams art up in my living room. What more do you want from me?
Yeah. Hams. Get with it. Well, Andrew, those were good winners. We're all winners this week, because after the break, we're getting into Pedro the Lion's Control. I almost said his name right that time. Good enough.
Hi, I'm Liam Hooper.
And I'm Peterson Toscano. Together, we co-host the Bible Bash podcast. Each month, we look into a different ancient story. We're curious to find insights into our own queer lives. We discuss these and share our findings with you.
You can find the Bible Bash podcast pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts.
New episodes come out at the end of each month.
Hey, John.
Hey.
You're a fan of punk, right?
I think so.
I think so too. So, have you heard of Small Step Records?
The name is familiar, but tell me more.
Well, Small Step Records is a faith-based DIY record label with bands that are melodic punk, pop punk, easycore, emo, and ska. And they have some new albums and new bands releasing records right now on all streaming services, and you should check them out. Bands like Home Plate, which has like an easy core vibe. So if you're fans of Newfound Glory or 4 Year Strong, you should check them out. You got Grandpa Loves Rhinos, which is definitely got like a pop punk vibe going on.
Andrew, not only that,
Ooh.
they are MagPod's first official sponsor.
Oh, really?
Starburst got nothing on these guys. All right. These guys are the real deal. The tagline is love God, love others, listen to pop punk. You can go to smallsteprecords.com, check out the cool records and merch and bands they have, and we will be, through their generosity, offering some giveaways in the coming weeks and months on our socials of some of these Small Step Bands records. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Also, John, unlike some record labels, which may have come up over the course of the podcast, the artists on Small Step always keep 100% of the rights and ownership of their music.
Yes.
So any money that goes to Small Step goes directly back into supporting the bands. That is a huge deal when it comes to supporting artists, because oftentimes band puts out a record, they don't own their music, but this is a label with integrity. So you love to see it.
Love to see it. Small Step. Check them out.
Smallsteprecords.com. And we're back.
Oh, this album's good.
This album has good music on it.
Sure does.
We're talking Pedro Lion, talking Control. No Indian Summer here in Minnesota today.
Some fresh snow, right?
Where it was snowing.
Yeah.
Oh man. Can't decide. It's like, is it 60? Is it raining? Is it snowing? I don't know. Let's just throw them all in the matter of like a few days. Is it thunderstorming and then it's snowing the next day? Sure is.
Sure. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. This definitely the insanity of climate change is not affecting anything. Nope, it's all good. Everything's cool. Everything's fine. It's fine.
Fortunately, that won't be covered at all on the album this week. Control was released April 16th, 2002 on Jade Tree. It features David Bazan on drums, guitars, bass, and keys. I mean, come on. Pretty good. It also features Casey Faubert. I've never been sure how to say his name, but that dude is a bit of a legend within the scene. He has played with Bazan in various capacities. He's played with Sufjan in various capacities. He plays on the Carrie and Lowell album, another classic of old sad bastard music, as far as I'm concerned. He's played with the Shins. He's played with Damien Jurado.
Are you down with OSB?
Yeah, you know me. Yeah, you know me. I guess I'll just listen to some Casey Faubert. That was Strong Sad.
Strong Sad from Homestar Runner.
You do the better Strong Sad than I do. I guess I'll just love Control. Kind of like that. I don't know. It's been a while since I've done that impression. Anyway, he's also helping out on bass, keys, guitar, percussion. I think they're just kind of playing whatever for whatever song. I don't think they're necessarily... I mean, here's what I think about when I think about this album. Drums, which I assume that's Bazan mostly slaying it on those skins. The drums sound incredible on this record. And the crunchy live sounding guitar, that guitar sound and drums are what I think about when I think about this album. I think all the instruments,
fuzzy as hell,
the bass
dude.
rules too. Getting some bleepy bloopy action with this record. The synths are starting to permeate.
Sometimes it's like, you're like, is there something going on there? It's not in your face.
Right. No.
But I love it. It's restrained.
Absolutely. And the times where it's front and center, ooh, it's beautiful. So I think the instruments sound great. I think this album sounds great. It was recorded and mixed by Bazan, Faubert, and our dude, Aaron Sprinkle.
Ooh.
At Control and Compound Recording. And that was not a detail that I remembered until looking at the details again this week. We were like, Aaron Sprinkle. He's
Come up on the pod before.
come up on the pod, not always in a super positive context, but dude knows how to produce. He, putting out interesting music now. Was not aware of his contributions to this record, but apparently very important how it came out. So well done, Aaron. Mastered by Troy Glesner at Spectre. They recorded it all the way through once and then scrapped it entirely and started again. Bazan wanted to, yeah, that sounds hard. He wanted to be more open to like a live sound, and kind of however it came out would be how it came out. And
can I make can I posit something?
Yes.
Did Aaron Sprinkle record it a certain way, and did they say absolutely not? They start all over.
I don't think.
I mean,
that's what happened in this case. That has happened before with a different artist we covered. But no, I think he was actually pretty instrumental, and literally because I think he played some of the instruments sometimes. But I think here's my like sort of theory is that he both thematically and musically sort of came in with an approach of how he wanted to do it, and then just sort of gave in to how it came together instead. And I think that was the right call, because I love the sound of this record. It does feel kind of live. It lends itself well to, it's a big rock record, it's heavy, it packs a punch. And this is the first time he's really kind of gone that far. And he did a tour recently to commemorate not the 20th, maybe it was the 15th anniversary or something, but it's such a record that lends itself well to live playing. These songs sound great live, and they fill up a good sounding room super well. And some of these songs I enjoyed when I just knew it as an album, but when I saw them live, kind of like unlocked for me in a new way. And I was like, oh, this is like, I'm really getting onto the wavelength now of kind of these heavy distorted guitars in a way that I maybe wasn't just listening through it. But I think it's similar to Winners Never Quit in a lot of ways, as we said. It's another concept album, although a looser concept this time around. But another depressing story involving spousal murder. This time the wife murders the husband.
Spoiler alert.
Sorry, yeah, that's what happens. But it was largely inspired by Bazan getting involved in the 1999 Seattle World Trade Organization protests, also known as the Battle of Seattle. I know he's talked about that a lot as sort of a moment for him where his politics kind of came into focus, and he came away determined to write about capitalism, and had originally intended for all the songs to sort of be about power structures, and then decided that was too limiting, and ended up mixing that in with songs about domestic troubles as well. And didn't necessarily mean for them all to cohere, but they do. And I think the question of how success and capitalism can kind of poison both, society and on a personal family level. So maybe similar to his recording approach, he wanted it to be a little less deliberate and just let what came out come out. But I think it's basically a masterpiece. Like it was very well reviewed. It was a lot of people's favorites. I think it still is a lot of people's favorite Pedro record. It certainly was mine for a while. And when it came out, it was like exactly what I wanted at that point, musically and lyrically, kind of continuing that trajectory, as we said, of sort of tracking with him as he went. Today, it doesn't hold that status for me, partly because of, I think, some of that messagey writing that he moved into here and kind of moved away from feels a little on the nose at times. Like the saying sort of titillating words or using these, blunt metaphors in a way that like felt a little like someone trying to prove that they're like gritty from the Christian world. You know what I mean? Sure. Like, as we said, come is invoked several times. But I still really love it. It all still feels very relevant thematically. And sometimes blunt metaphors are what you need for the world that we live in. And yeah, it feels like very Adbusters-y to me, at a time when I was very on that wavelength of questioning power structures and capitalism. And so I don't know, it certainly is like, it feels of a specific time to me in a way, but I also feel like these songs all hold up completely, to the extent that, as you were saying, like almost any of these could be in my top 3.
You'd be hard pressed out to find an album out there that has a strong of a like opening 3 or 4 songs like Control has.
Yeah.
This is an unbelievable run of songs.
Yeah. I'm very curious now about your top 3.
It's, bro, I think here's what we need to say. It's nearly impossible to choose a top 3 on this record because my favorite songs kind of go back and forth all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm saying it now, and you said it before. I reserve the right to change it.
Yeah.
In the moment, because sometimes they hit differently. Sometimes I feel so strongly about some songs, and then I get to a certain song, I'm like, oh, God, this is a top 3 contender? Is it like,
yeah,
is it my favorite song? I don't know.
Right.
It's hard. But to your point about the blunt metaphors, like that sort of stuff, I don't know if he was necessarily being like a try hard or anything. I feel like, he was just released an album also about murder, suicide, and corruption and selfish people. And
yeah,
I think, I don't know. I don't know. I was also not listening to it at the time, and we don't know Bazan's sort of mindset in the writing of this record, and maybe part of it too was like pushing back on the moralistic church that's like that he talked about on Winners Never Quit, that it's like certain things are acceptable but other things aren't. We're gonna make a differentiation between what we consider acceptable sin and unacceptable sin. And think about what had just was happening at this time with George W. Bush taking office, and sort of true right-wing evangelicalism was becoming a major forefront thing. Like I don't know. Maybe there's something there. Maybe it's just
no, I think it was the time for that kind of stuff to be addressed. And in fact, I remember another questionable thing that I asked at a show around this time.
2004.
This was 2003. So I was like, what do you think about John Kerry?
Yeah.
I was like, this guy just got the nomination. Like, I want to know what Dave Bazan has to say about it. And it wasn't anything good, I don't think. But I remember people being like, like when I said that, which, like, looking back, maybe I didn't need to ask him that. But yeah, I think for me, it's not so much that it's like naughty words. It's like the metaphors just aren't as, I feel like Winners Never Quit and Achilles Heel hold up a little better in terms of just like art that feels a little more timeless, rather than like, it just, there's a sort of like, not clunkiness to this, but just like the metaphors aren't as like clean. And maybe that's okay, because this feels, again, very much sort of its time. It's like musically matches that in terms of like, this is a blunt, hard record. It's documenting this moment. And for all those reasons, it's not like I bump on it. It's just like, at the time I was just like, whoosh, my mind was blown by it. Now I'm a little bit like, it's a little like college dormy at times, which is fine. He's worked up and he's mad, but and rightfully so. But yeah, I feel like Winners, I had a pretty clear sense of my top 3, at least my top 2. And this one, I just love every song and think of this record so much as like a cohesive piece that it's hard for me to determine which ones are really my favorite. So this will be interesting as we go through it.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really, really tough. And I think we need to get into it now.
Let's do it.
Can't wait. Options. This is my number one.
Okay. It's not in my top 3.
Yeah.
Should it be?
While this isn't slow and steady in the
Yeah.
sense that I don't think about it with the same level of love that I have for that song. I think this song also sets out a lot
Yes.
of what we're going to be hearing on this record.
Absolutely.
There's a couple things that you can take away from this song that you get to in the second verse, in the second chorus. But him saying I could never divorce you without a good reason, and though I may never have to, it's good to have options. So there's so much that you could parse from that. The part where he says I may never have to,
Right.
is very curious to me. That he's like, I don't know, like, maybe you'll leave me because
Right.
maybe like I don't have to make the choice, and but if I want to, maybe I can. So it's like, clearly you're already getting a sense that this guy's kind of a piece of shit, because then he's like,
Right.
but for now I need you, like, which is like also kind of shitty, but like for
Yes.
now,
Right.
for now, like everything's good. But the part where at the end where he says, so I told her I loved her, and she told me she loved me, and I mostly believed her, and she mostly believed me.
Yeah.
It's
a gut punch.
It is such a gut punch part of the song, and it's those lines that you're like, oh, this marriage
is in bad shape.
It's kind of doomed,
as we'll find out in the next song.
As you find out in the next song. So they're like, they don't trust each other, they don't believe each other, and they're not saying what they mean.
It's very sad. I mean, it's I remember being struck by it like the first time I heard it, because it seems almost like romantic at first. It's like kind of this sway song. They're walking, holding hands. And he's like, I could never divorce you. And it's like, that's kind of sweet. And it's like, without a good reason. You're just like, oh, shit. And then it's like, but for now, I need you. Like, it's another, like, the I need you part is like, should be this romantic part, but it's like, just makes it so sad by having the like, but for now, in the same way that sort of Winners Never Quits central romantic relationship is like very much about the surface level, like, don't screw things up for me. You sort of gets the sense that the wife was like a political prop for him in this quest for success. Here it's not dissimilar, where it's like throughout this whole album we're exploring a guy and a family who are like all about the surface level and how things come off in appearances, but really underneath there's all this awful stuff brewing, and he feels like he can't say those things out loud, and so what happens is the family disintegrates and there's a murder in there. So anyway, musically I like that central riff a lot. I think it's really cool.
Oh man,
it's pretty great.
Like the slidey part,
the slidiness is really cool. Yep. Again, those organy keys just in the background, chilling, pulled back, not overpowering, pretty simple, but I think really effective. And I mean, yeah, another in a long line of devastating relationship songs about secrets for Bazan, and certainly slow, but I think done with the kind of electric power that he just hadn't done a ton with up to that point. So it really hits.
Yeah. And that part where right before he comes into that first verse, where they just like hit that chord and the cymbals, and it just feels like things open up.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm like, that's so great. But I do want to hear this final chorus.
Sure.
brutal.
Not in that way.
I can't do that.
Not right now.
All right now.
Yep, this was one that I was like, is it in my top 3? Is it my number 1? No, it's not in my top 3 at all. Okay. So once again, they're all, it could be, it might as well be my number 1, but it's not.
All right. We'll go from devastation to a different kind of devastation.
Yes.
Rapture.
This is how we multiply. Pity that it's not my wife. The friction and skin, the trembling side. This is how the bodies move. With everything that we could lose, pushing us deeper still. The sheets and the sweat, the seed and the spill, the bitter pill yet undiscovered.
It's my number 3.
Okay. Also not in my top 3, but like, is it?
It
might be.
It's hard to deny everything that's going on. We haven't even gotten to
The chorus.
the chorus.
You got to hear some of that.
And everything else that happens.
Yeah.
The bridge.
Yep.
The bridge is great, but
It's all good.
yes, the metaphor in this song is he's comparing coming to
Jesus coming.
well, he's like
In a
he's
different way.
like he's having sex with his I don't know who this person does. I guess it doesn't really matter, but he's cheating on his wife, and he's comparing climaxing to seeing Jesus and being called home to the promised
Yeah.
land.
Which, like, you know, if he was going to, he obviously didn't win himself any fans in the Christian bookstore world. This is kind of the beginning of the alienation of his original fans here. But it's, you know, again, we're working from this character's perspective, so, you know, maybe we're not supposed to agree with this idea being a good one. Like, it's a little bit like the guy imagining receiving a mansion in heaven in Slow and Steady, where it's like, you know, now he's climaxing and imagining Jesus. You know, it's like, it's not quite as like pointedly objectionable in terms of theology, but it's just like a glimpse into like, boy, this is a bummer, and this person is very confused, and like, whatever the reason for it, like if it's like this, you know, sexual rapture of an
Yes.
affair in a hotel room, like
I think
maybe
that's the play on words there.
right, he hasn't had this, you know, maybe things have gotten stale at home, he can't be honest with his wife anymore. By the way, like, be honest with your spouse, go to therapy, talk things through so that you don't end up in
Yeah.
a hotel comparing your climaxing to Jesus. But, you know, maybe that's the idea, is like this person is experiencing this kind of pleasure and rapture in a way that he hasn't in a long time, and it's like, I could even see Jesus, this is the greatest. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a bummer, and it's gross, but it's also like so propulsive and catchy. And
Yeah.
like, there's definitely a time when this came out, I would have said this was my number 1. Like, it just is so, and when those like Moogie synths come in with like,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, this rules so hard.
Yeah. And the palm muted power chords too.
Totally.
The song has everything.
It really does. Yeah, we're already onto an affair immediately after that first song, in case there's any confusion about how healthy that relationship was. But just from second one, it's like such good guitar and drum parts. I love that synthy sound that starts in the first verse and kind of, you know, again, propelling it just in the background. And then, yeah, just the single notes ringing out in the chorus. Like I said, the ring, just like, boy, it rules. Should we hear some of that chorus real quick?
We should.
This
I love that little walk up there.
So good. Yep. It rules.
Killing
so
it.
good. Again, did I make some mistakes by not having either of those in my top three? Maybe I did.
You fucked up.
Could've.
So he goes on to, he's, everybody has that post-cum clarity,
The PCC.
the PCC everybody talks about. Where he's like, oof, that was awesome. Probably shouldn't be doing this anymore.
Right.
But
It's 10 more minutes.
Just 10 more minutes,
Yeah.
So what's 10 more minutes?
Uh,
But should we get to this bridge?
Sure.
Just barely moving. The tension building. Our bodies working to reach the goal. Oh, my sweet rapture.
Rules.
Yep.
We basically played the whole song, but it's so good.
This is an amazing song.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the normie,
I don't know if it's the normie one, but
I don't know.
it's rocking pretty hard.
I know which one's gonna be in your top three at least, but
Interesting.
it's your number one or number two or whatever is probably my number four. But again, it probably could be my number three. Who knows? It's arbitrary.
Yeah.
Should we talk some penetration?
Some penetration.
Have you ever seen an idealist with gray hairs on his head? Or successful men who keep in touch with unsuccessful friends? You only think you did. And I could have sworn I saw it too. But as it turns out, it was just a clever ad for cigarettes. Cause if it isn't making dollars, then it isn't making sense. If you aren't moving units, then you're not worth the expense. If you really want to make it, you had best remember this. If it isn't penetration, then it isn't worth the kiss. And we're so sorry, sir, but
This is my number two.
Ooh, it's my number three. Boy, that
This song
rules.
rules so hard.
Oh, it's so good. I feel like
Drums are so good.
the drums, man, the way that he's just constantly on the ride or the crash cymbal throughout the entire album just makes it
I know.
so big and loud and driving. I feel like that's what I think of when I think of Control's like cymbal. Like again, the
he's-
drums Yeah.
beating the shit out of the drums on this record.
He really is. He is a good drummer. The drums and the guitar sound, like from second one, are just so catchy and propulsive here. And the chorus is so great. That little, down and upstroke guitar part, and then the drum fill into the chorus. So good, man.
It's so good.
Little bass slide in the chorus. Boy, I like
so
this
heavy.
song.
It's so heavy. I
So
really
heavy.
hope I hear this live.
Yeah, I don't know if you will, but
Ugh.
be pretty great to hear. Maybe, with this Pedro band reformed, he's leaning more into some of these rockers from the early days.
Oh man.
Somewhat similar thematic territory here to the last song, except this time we're comparing sex to the ruthlessness of capitalism rather than the rapture. If it isn't penetration, then it isn't worth a kiss. Obviously, again, not a subtle metaphor. But I feel like the bang, 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 the music just matches that lack of subtlety. Like this is just like sometimes calling a spade works for the subject matter. And it feels like it's just such a rocker. It goes so hard and it matches this critique of our society that is, corrupt. So
yeah. I can totally see Bazan or somebody having a meeting with a music executive and them using, if it isn't penetration, then it isn't worth the kiss in the meeting. I can see in my mind, we're all picturing the same guy, the same sleazy music executive.
Yeah, right.
Saying like, hey, Davey, baby, if it isn't penetration, it's worth a kiss, buddy. Come on, pal.
Right. Yeah.
So
gross.
It is super gross. But I feel like we need to call out how funny this first verse is.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen an idealist with gray hairs on his head or successful men that keep in touch with unsuccessful friends? You only think you do. I could have sworn I saw it too, but as it turns out, it was just a clever ad for cigarettes.
Yeah.
I think that's really fucking funny.
Yeah. I remember being, 19 when this came out and being like, oh, I will still be an idealist when I have gray hair on my head. And of course, that's what he's calling out as people who have that position. And of course, now that I do have gray hairs on my head, things are more complicated. But yeah, it's pretty good, man. He's got a very biting wit on many of these songs that serve this material very well.
Yeah. The thing about the word penetration too is working in data and analytics and CPG. The word penetration is often thrown around a lot, unfortunately. About market penetration,
right? So gross.
And so, yeah, so part of me too is is he talking about is there a double meaning that he's using? Is he using penetration in multiple ways
yes,
too?
I believe so. Yes.
But David, I have a question. Is the penetration, is this a metaphor?
Yeah. It's kind of what he would be gracious. I hope he would be gracious to the 19-year-old asking that question. Yeah, good song.
Good song. You know what else is a good song?
This next one.
Ultraviolet rays are washing over doesn't it make you feel good?
And
My number 2.
yes, I was wondering if this was going to be your number 1 or number 2, which is
There's
why I said this was
another-
my number 4.
You're right. There's another synthy driven song we'll get to that takes the top spot. But yeah, this could be my number 1. They could all be my number 1.
I know.
Bleeps and bloops, baby. This is the first time that the synth come up to the front after being in the back of the mix for a while.
Yes.
I absolutely love that high synth part that opens the song. It's in my head all the time still. And that lower synth bass that comes in on top of it. Perfect. And then that, yeah, the double time that comes in with the pre-chorus, it's so good.
Yes, and the driving guitar and
yep,
it's so great. This is kind of an interesting look at, you're like, oh, from the outside looking in, you're like, oh, the mom's by the pool, the dad's coming home, the kids are hugging him, and
yeah,
everything looks great.
Not so good.
That's when you're talking about like this is the sort of the climate change song.
Yeah, I feel like I could always picture back when this came out what the music video might be for it, where it's sort of like, this row of like moms tanning themselves and neon bikinis and everybody looks great, and then it's like, he's like, I just now brought a brand new car, and there's like the cutaway to like a shiny game show lady showing off a new car, like, you know what I mean? It's all very like, I can see the vibe of the sort of sarcastic surface level kind of 90s music video thing this is doing. The chorus is these major chords that come in, and it's so big and satisfying, and it's just this repeated refrain of God bless the Indian summer. And I feel like this all the time, where the characters, both the family in the first verse and like the country in the second, are enjoying their capital and their power. And they see this summer that's sticking around a little too long, that's coming from global warming, as being a positive thing. They're just enjoying themselves. I feel like whenever it's warm when it shouldn't be, and people are like, this is great, I'm just like, no, this is terrifying. Like, that's how I feel with the song, where it's like, hey, God bless the Indian summer. And it's like, but wait, on the surface, you're having a good time, but this is very foreboding and scary.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, I don't like resent the fact that these aren't metaphors you have to like dig for, but again, like sometimes that's what things call for, and climate change has not improved in the last 20 years, so
sure hasn't.
It's such a powerful song to me, that those synths are really kind of what it put over the edge to me into my top 3. But I've always loved the song very much. I have this distinct memory of this album came out, playing it in the summer between years of college, and I was a janitor at like a law firm, and I would bring in my boombox and just like blast this record while I was cleaning. This and Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots
sure
by Flaming Lips came out in the same summer, just blasting these. So anyway, I remember very much hearing Indian Summer, just being like, this rules so hard.
And you're probably thinking like, yeah, but this law firm, these guys are tasting their corporate cum, and they're,
well, it was a very small law firm. I wasn't bad at them, but
okay, fine. I don't know. I just imagined that was your silent, your quiet protest. You're like, I'm going to listen to Pedro the Lion at this law firm.
I'm sure I was like a nightmare when I got home and talked to my parents about like the state of the world. So I remember I probably shared this on the pod at some point, but it was around this time when at Thanksgiving, this is probably the first Thanksgiving when I got home from college, and my grandma was like, we were like saying grace, or shortly after grace or something, she was like, and I pray for the president every day. And I was like, well, I hope it's to pray for him to get his life together because he's a bad person. Anyway, that's where I was at. Shouting at grandma.
Yeah, I was kind of unbearable myself.
Yeah.
Progress.
Anyway, progress. think about this one?
It's impossible to understand what he's saying in the first verse.
Right.
So I will read to give people context. He says, "Here we have our dust-free dining set. We guarantee it won't collect a speck. Freeing up the children to instead grow into your molding, heed more of your scolding, go early to their new self-making beds." So it's like this sort of futuristic
Yes.
ad read of sorts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This song was originally on the Progress EP in 2000 under the title April 6, 2039, which again is sort of invoking that futury idea. That EP has that song, 2 live versions of It's Hard to Find a Friend songs, and then the song June 18th, 1976, which I actually like that song more than anything on It's Hard to Find a Friend, but that's neither here nor there. The version of this song on that EP is kind of bleepy bloopy per the subject matter of the song. And I don't know that I prefer that one, but I at least prefer that I could hear the lyrics. And I get the idea that it's like, you know, there's this distorted, echoey opening. It's sort of meant to signify like the progress invoked in the song. We go from not hearing much, it sort of sounds robotic, to like then we can hear it in the next part. And I don't know. I wish it was done differently. I do like the song a lot. I like the sort of shimmery, reverby guitar that comes in. I like the melody, but I just feel like, you know, in the way that it sort of leans into that country Pedro sound we like, I would have preferred probably a little more straightforward version that doesn't have that opening and that was maybe a little twangier, maybe acoustic. I don't know, because I think it's a really pretty song. And again, very like biting in what you were saying in terms of like, we make this technological progress as a society, but that doesn't mean moral progress. Like, I think it's a cool song. It just always kind of got lost in the mix for me when I was listening to it all the time, because it's just like, this is the one that opens with like this weird distortion thing. And, you know, I feel like there's a version of the song where it could make the melody and the message like pop a lot more.
With a record like this that's so focused on capitalism and consumerism, this song is seeming to indicate like, here, look, are all these additional conveniences to help with your disobedient children and all that. But then the second verse is like, it's impossible to cure a husband bent on cheating, the oxygen's depleting, a child who's always bragging, a wife's persistent nagging. We're equipped to live as though it were.
Right.
So the media is trying to sell us distractions,
right,
to and solutions for things that aren't like going to solve the more relevant in our face issues that we're dealing with.
Right.
Climate change and families falling apart. And
right.
It's like, well, at least the dishes look nice.
Right. Yeah. There's this emphasis again on sort of the surface level. These things will solve our problems and then we won't have any. But of course that's not the case. The surfaces might get ever cleaner and more convenient and more materials and more impressive materials, but that's not going to do anything to address the core issues underlying them.
Right.
Again, go to therapy, family.
Yep.
That will help.
Yep.
Anyway. Magazine.
This line is metaphysical, and on the one side, the bad half live in wickedness, and on the other side,
drums in this song are
Ugh.
absolutely insane.
So much so that they make it my number one.
Oh shit! Wow.
You not here for it?
What do you mean I'm not here for it? I would not have guessed that this would have been your number one, but the song has so much going on in it, and it's listening to the drumming on its own is just like, you could like listen to the lyrics and focus on the lyrics and then just focus on the drums, and then like the little keys part in the background too, and there's just so much cool stuff going on. He's truly a master at what he does.
It's true, man. Those opening keys feel so iconic. It's so memorable. This is a popular one for Pedro fans. It still gets played a lot. But that ding, 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 ding is so like, ooh, we're going somewhere cool. But by the time the drums come in, I'm just like, it's all over, man. Those drums, it's just like he's doing so many interesting things with the syncopation that like he doesn't need to do, but he does. And so it makes the song just go to this next level. And yeah, between that central keyboard line and how the drums just go absolutely wild by the end of it,
ape shit,
it does it for me. Let's hear some of those drums in the outro, because that's really where the song goes to the full level for me.
So cool.
I love it so much. Once again, could this be like anywhere in my top 3? Yes, but I cannot deny how I feel about those drums in particular. I think, again, we're playing with this central idea throughout the album of like being perfect on the surface, designed to hide the reality of what's actually going on underneath. I think the way that kind of opens, he's talking about these, again, exploring kind of like hypocritical dualities of the good half and the bad half, and making these social judgments. And this is another one that I remember him changing the lyrics to live at a certain point, where he changed it to the bad half live in wickedness to the good half live in wickedness, and the good half live in arrogance to the bad half live in arrogance. Again, kind of critiquing a bit of the idea of like the good quote unquote brother from Winners Never Quit. He talks about his holy quest to be above reproach, which feels similar to the vibe of that record. But yeah, this one just goes so hard, and I think is another one that like when I saw it live and I saw those drums flailing, it just like unlocked something for me, and I was like, oh, this is a special song. So
yeah,
it's good.
Now we sort of shift to getting a little bit more inside the head of the wife character on this record in rehearsal.
It's priceless when you say you have to work away. When we both know you're at a motel.
Could we actually hear the drum fill that comes in on verse 2 here? I just got to hear this part. So good.
Get rules.
Drums, the drums. This is a major top 3 contender for me as well. That sort of dizzying, disorienting, ringing guitar note that's just like it's also heavily distorted. Those drums are so reverby.
Yep.
I love how just frenzied it sounds throughout. And yeah, as you said, that kind of reflects the wife's mental state as she's discovering the adultery that we've been hearing about earlier in the album. And I don't know, this is when we get into like truly bummer territory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the chorus is, "Darling, you are so unoriginal, each move more obvious than the one before it," where it's like, yeah, of course you're cheating on me. Like what a cliche.
Well, and that's the thing, that's the part that she says that's is the most depressing,
Right.
is that he's doing it, he's cheating in the most like cliched way
Right,
possible. Like you're sleeping with somebody at like a sleazy motel, you're so
Right.
unoriginal. Like in this sort of like that it's about appearances, that she thinks if you're gonna cheat on me, you should be doing it in like a more and a more luxurious way or something, but like that you're doing it like this.
Oh, shocker, this guy who's like having a midlife crisis, with his like nice car and job is having this very by the book affair. The like, here's the thing that's so much more depressing than the infidelity itself. You're so unoriginal.
That's a bummer. And she says that she's like, if I learned that you were cheating on me, I would kill you.
So we follow that line of thought with the next song.
Well, almost we are just building to something insane here.
I mean, like you said, the actual act may not occur within the song. It never actually kind of happens off screen, so to speak, but we see her just beginning to lose her grip on reality in the same way that the husband does in Winners Never Quit.
Yeah.
Right before that act occurs. But, you know, Second Best is the name of the song. It's like trying to make peace sort of with the idea of being second best. What's wrong with second best? And we see how well that goes by where the next song starts.
Yeah.
But this is another one that like is the top 3 contender for me, not necessarily because of anything we heard so far, but because you said it builds to such a crescendo emotionally and musically to where by the end he's just like goes up an octave and is belting it out and the guitar is just absolutely going wild.
Yeah.
Hearing it again live changed it for me. We're like, I just love how thick and scary it sounds by the ending, and seeing all those guitars doing that live, just wailing away, was like, whoa, I've been underrating this song.
Yes.
Should we hear some of the ending?
Yes.
Like 4 or 15 maybe.
Yes. So heavy.
It's so good, man. That is like some metally bazan there.
I know, right? Can we talk about the bridge? The mattress creaks beneath the symphony of misery and cum.
Yeah.
So awesome. The symphony of misery is such a great line.
And then throw cum in there too.
I know, you gotta throw cum in.
It's just, it has that sort of like disorienting quality that we talked about with some of the songs on Winners, where we're just like dwelling in this place of just like things are bad, like this, this marriage is crumbling. They're like, she's maybe trying to reignite a passionate flame they had when she learns about what's happening, and it's just this miserable experience for everybody. And boy, by the time he's belting what's wrong with second best, and you're just like, you don't believe that. Things are very bad. It's sad and it's scary and it's powerful, and man, just the way that those guitars hit just really makes it hit for me.
The sort of inner dialogue of like her trying to convince herself. You're just like, oh honey, it's like, I can learn to live with this, plus I need the rest,
right?
It's like,
it's so sad.
It's so sad. But then there's like probably something, I kind of think about this, like this rocking ending being the part where she's just like, you know what, like I get the sense that she's like spying on them, watching them go into the hotel, and she's gonna be like, you know what, never mind.
You are gonna die.
You need to die.
I remember this wasn't necessarily one of my favorite songs from the record when I was listening to it a lot around the time it came out, but again, when I saw it live, I was just like, whoa, it really stuck with me. And the next time I saw him live, he wasn't playing, that would be the Achilles heel tour by that point. He wasn't really playing as many Control songs, but I loved that experience of hearing it so much that, again, I apologize to Dave Bazan, like a fool. I kept shouting second best. And like I shouted it enough times at one point, he was like, I'm not playing that. I was like, oh. But I wanted to capture that moment again. And when he did that Control tour where he played the album front to back, I was like so satisfied hearing that part again live. Real good. And now we go into another kind of depressing song.
Priests and Paramedics. Buddy was not all right.
No, he died.
He got stabbed. This is a top 3 contender for me in a serious way. It almost
Yes.
made my top 3 because I love the story telling element of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very, very satisfying melody.
Yeah.
But it's also very sad, and I love the priests and paramedics, two groups of people dealing with death
Mhm.
in different ways. We don't we can't not going to play the whole song, but suffice it to say, he dies. They're at a funeral.
I actually just want to read those lyrics, if that's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should just read the lyrics. Go ahead.
I mean, we have in the first part of the song, the guy is like got a stretcher being attended to by paramedics, screaming, "Am I going to die?" And they're like, "No, you'll be all right." And he dies. And so, focusing on how both priests and paramedics are trained to lie in a way, like calming people down that they're going to be okay and it's going to be okay. So we get that first part with the paramedics telling that to the husband, but then the priest at the funeral follows a similar line in a more sort of devastating way. As the priest got up to speak, the assembly craved relief, but he himself had given up. So instead, he offered them this bitter cup. "You're going to die. We're all going to die. Could be 20 years, could be tonight. Lately, I've been wondering why we go through so much trouble to postpone the unavoidable and prolong the pain of being alive." It's like, what an absolute bummer.
Same.
Same, but also kind of comforting. Like,
Yeah.
the honesty of the priest and the like respect that this priest decides to show in this moment where he's like, you know what, fuck it. Like, I don't think that it's okay, and I'm not gonna. This whole album, these people have been lied to by corporations and by commercials and by each other, and
Yep.
all these different ways to sort of fill these holes and fix these problems. And this priest, who's probably used to being like, Joe went to a better place, he was
Right.
beloved by his family, is just like, look, we're all gonna die. And like, I wonder why we do, and I wonder why we keep living where there's so much pain. And if the priest in charge of this thing is the one who's sort of like, I don't have the answers here, I struggle with this just like you, we're all in this life that's difficult, like that to me is actually kind of like the most comforting thing to hear in the wake of like this tragedy happening. So I imagine the funeral attenders weren't super happy about what the priest decided to do, but it's such an interesting juxtaposition of like these paramedics who are like, they're just doing their job by being like, you'll be okay. And these leaders who, how they decide to do what. And this priest at this funeral who's just like, I'm going to tell the truth today and say what I really feel, which is what nobody's done the whole album. So I don't know. It's incredibly moving to me. I love the song very much.
Yeah. I took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. The the different ways that priests and paramedics deal with death and speak to those who are mourning. And I'm trying to think of who we know that like who did like chaplaincy. That's just something I knew I could never do. Like, people who went to seminary and like did chaplaincy, it's like that to me seems it's too much responsibility to find the right words and to find ways to comfort people, when it's just like the reality is like fucking nobody's getting out of this, man.
Right.
And like I would not be in a place where I could I feel like I would be this priest, be like I'm not gonna try and sugarcoat it. Like, this guy got stabbed, his kids are here alone because his wife is presumably in jail, but they're well behaved. Isn't that great?
Right. That's observed again, like throughout the album, this idea of children being obedient and well behaved, but like, what does that matter?
Right.
The best sort of pastoring this guy can offer people is being honest, which I think is good pastoring.
Yes.
And clearly what these people need, in options, he's like, people never really say what they mean, so we just like kept going through the motions and kept lying to each other. And it's easy to do that. It's harder and probably better for everybody if you can say, I don't really know why we're alive, and sometimes I'm like, why are we? Should we not be alive? Like, that seems like the most appropriate way to handle something so awful.
One last piece that I want to point out, if you
Yeah.
don't have anything else that you want to say, the takeaway too is, so here's this guy, powerful, wealthy, has the power to hire and fire people at will, and getting his mistresses and whatever. This mover and shaker for capitalism and consumerism, and he does all this stuff, selling himself to make companies more money, make himself money. And in the end, several friends came from his grave.
Yeah, right.
It's like you have just like a couple people maybe that come to see you get killed in this awful way, and who shows up?
Right.
Like your priorities are fucked.
Right.
You're working towards money, you're working towards power, and you're sacrificing relationships, you're sacrificing love, you're sacrificing connection, and this is what you get. You don't have actual closeness, you don't have real connection.
Yeah.
And that is a huge bummer.
Yeah, it is. It's this weird, I think Bazan continuously on his albums threads the needle well of closing with a sort of sad state of affairs, but finding this glimmer of hope, if you can call it hope.
Right.
Much like Lauren Michaels' point earlier, that ultimately Pedro, in dealing with these depressing songs, is ultimately addressing hope and how we can find hope in a world where things are bleak. What do we do to find meaning?
Look, we're all going to die.
Could be 20 years, could be tonight. So let's cut this sketch. I was just going to say, definitely a breakout from the album. This is one that is oft covered by other artists and seems to have really found a hold in terms of getting played in a bunch of different permutations and versions and people playing it. And it's a beautiful melody. I mean, again, it's very sad, but it's like to your point, it's another kind of, this is one where there's not like a ton going on musically or instrumentally. It's just a really pretty song, and it's played fairly straightforward on a record full of huge drums and reverby guitars. It's a pretty simple, stripped down song that plays very well as just an acoustic solo song too. So great song.
Great song. And now the closing track, Rejoice. It's a song of very few words.
Yes.
But I think a topic worth discussing.
Yep.
And most everything
man, I have so much to say about this song.
Yes. Let's read the very brief lyrics to Rejoice. Wouldn't it be so wonderful if everything were meaningless? But everything is so meaningful, and most everything turns to shit. Rejoice, 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 rejoice. And then he takes it up an octave and is screaming, rejoice. It's great.
As you raise the question, is sort of, is this sarcastic? Is this sincere? I've heard him say that he would sing it both ways sometimes, like it depended on how he felt in the moment. But to what you alluded to earlier, for me, I have always felt like it breaks with the sort of cynical sheen of the rest of the album and is a genuine expression. And it's it's beautiful. It's pretty, it's very haunting. And with that chorus of rejoice, the repeated rejoice that comes in, there are these like sort of angelic sounding voices that are like keyboard, I think probably. It's like this chorus that comes in. And for me, it's like, I treated this sort of like Secret of the Easy Yoke in the sense that this was sort of a worship song for me. Like sometimes this is the most authentic worship I could muster, where it's like, again, you're just being honest. Like, it would be wonderful if everything were meaningless. You would be able to numb the pain and not engage with what's happening. But in reality, everything is meaningful. You might stuff it down in these like cynical ways where we can hide things, like the rest of the album does, like this family has done, like America often does. But everything has meaning, and we need to remember that. And most everything turns to shit. Again, I think reflects for me sort of what the priest was saying, where it's like, look, things are tough in this life, and like not everything is going to work out, and most things, people will die and your loved ones will die. So rejoice. And again, you could take that as like, oh, most everything turns to shit, rejoice. So it's like, oh yeah, rejoice, like what do we have to rejoice about? But for me, it's like the idea that we can acknowledge that things have meaning even in the face of bleakness is something to rejoice about. We're in this life one time, and we make these connections that we make, and maybe we can make connections to spirituality or a higher power, but we got to find some way to make sense of how we connect to each other. And there's a way to rejoice amid that connection, even when everything is awful. That's how I take it, at least.
Yeah. If we could move through life and nothing mattered, then the death, the infidelity, the shitty children, all of that stuff wouldn't matter, because everything would be meaningless.
Right.
But because we have these deep connections, and we choose relationships with people, and things turn to shit, it's like, it sucks. And trying to find a way to navigate that in spite of the shit is, I think, for me, the rejoice part, that rejoicing in spite of the shit.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part for me, man.
Totally.
It's really, really hard.
I think that's why it moves me in a lot of ways, in the way that a worship song might, because it's sort of a call to do something, the call to rejoice is a call to remember to try and take stock of that in light of how hard things can be. And that moves me. He gave this interview that's been mentioned a few times, where he kind of talked about the meaning of it. And, I think most people probably think of like Ecclesiastes, where it's like meaningless, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. That's how the book starts out, which is kind of famously like, that's sort of the same way that the song goes, where it's like he's quoting like a teacher in that book, but the book sort of moves into, but like actually everything has meaning. But he was saying that like for him, the most everything turns to shit came out of a place of like his sort of reformed theology at the time, where he was like, things are bad without God, which is interesting. He's like, this is a quote from an interview with the Phoenix New Times. I certainly wrote it from a perspective of being in a fallen world at that time. My friend Jason Martin of Starflyer, who we'll get into, told me that's the most Christian song I've ever heard anybody write. And I thought, oh, that's weird. I didn't think of it like that. But yeah, I just did. If someone is reformed at all, that communicates the reformed perspective pretty directly, which is interesting. And he goes on to say in the same interview, there are two ways to read the refrain. One is that the rejoice is sarcastic, and one where rejoice is genuine. No matter which way you take it, both of them are deeply rooted in the biblical tradition. One of the things that happens with evangelical Christianity is that there are just huge swaths of the Bible that Christians completely ignore, like how on every fucking page there's an admonition to take care of the poor. I think that was just highlighting a pretty unpopular sentiment that is present all throughout the Bible, but especially Ecclesiastes. So interesting to hear that. I don't know. When I was vibing with it at the time, I wasn't taking that most everything turns to shit and sort of the Calvinist, like we're all awful way.
Oh, sure.
But that also speaks to how the song is powerful, because he has still played it post this phase, and like I think to your point, you can find meaning in the song about meaning in a lot of ways, and whether it's through this explicitly Christian specific kind of Christianity lens or a different lens entirely, I still think it's a powerful sentiment. So anyway, that's the end of my thesis on Rejoice, a song I love dearly that closes an album I love dearly. I don't know, would 18-year-old Andrew have been down for all this if you'd given the album a couple more chances, or do you think your heart was not ready to receive this at the time?
I'm trying to think if I would be scandalized by it or not.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I think the metaphors and the nuance would have been lost on me. I think I'm one of those people that he's talking about in magazine, the metaphysical line of like, there's a good side and there's a bad side, but like we're all going back and forth between it, but I think I looked at things a little too black and white at that age to maybe understand like what he was getting at.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk about tracking with him throughout his journey, throughout his discography. Obviously, there were a lot of people who were turned off by this album who liked his earlier stuff. I do wonder, though, how many of those people, as they grew older, were like, oh, actually, this album means a lot to me. For me, this album meant a lot at the time, but totally to your point, I was not... I was having some version of thought about like the song Rejoice, for example, that I just expressed, but it was a modicum of that level of thinking. Like I wasn't really processing it. It's a meaningful album to me now in a way that's different from the just like, fuck yeah meaning that I had with the album at the time. But it's meant a lot to me over the years. I have revisited it often. I could not wait to talk about this one, and it was so fun to talk about it with you. Folks out there, let us know what you think at Magnified Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Follow and subscribe to the pod if you haven't already. And hey, give us a rating or review, would you?
Yeah.
We're a little light on those new reviews. These days, swing by Apple Podcasts. It helps folks find us. We drive that algorithm where it needs to go. So
yeah, help us with the SEO. Start a.
That's right. Yeah.
Start Googling things like, are Andrew and John from Magnified Pod super hot?
Yeah.
Is Andrew from Magnified Pod single and horny in my area?
Local Andrews are looking for
Andrews.
Yeah, Google all those things. See what happens. And then
looking for single podcast hosts in your area.
I'm sure there's plenty of them. Nobody's looking for that.
Nobody's looking for that.
Looking for dudes who are pushing 40 talking about Pedro the Lion albums? Click here. Oh yeah. Email us at magnifiedpod@gmail.com.
You can leave us a voicemail at 872-762-4763, 872-7magpod.
You can support us over at the patreon.com/magnifiedpod. Bonus episodes, special content, get on that Discord. And we want to welcome new Patreon punk, Katie Beth Tyson Franklin.
Yeah.
Through?
Yes, it did.
Thank you, Katie. Very glad to have you among the ranks of the Patreon punks. Good crew over there. Pick up some new season 4 merch at magnifiedpod.storeenvy.com. Thanks to Small Step Records for sponsoring us. Check out smallsteprecords.com. And thanks to shadow producer Jason and Bruno at Unoriginal Vinyl for our artwork. Well, I think I hear the voice of the spirit begging us to shut the fuck up. We'll be back to try to make you go astray next week when we'll discuss Pedro the Lion's Achilles heel. Ooh.
Ultraviolet rays are washing over all the boys and girls as their moms lay tanning by the pool.
Oh, hey, moms, what's up? What you doing? You come around to this pool often, or what's your deal? Just are these your kids? Oh, gross. Never mind. See ya.
You guys like worried about the state of climate change or no? You good? Okay, cool.
I saw this post recently on Instagram that said 7 things women wish men would do during sex.
Okay.
Number 4, start a podcast. According to over half of the women survey, it really turned them on because starting a podcast is really cool / original. We don't have enough of them yet.
Oh, called out.
Called out.
That's fired.
It's like, ooh, baby. Do you
Tell me
think you
more.
could could you start a long
Yeah.
form podcast about
Was this episode more than 2.5 hours, baby?
if these episodes go longer than 2.5 hours, you might need to call your doctor.
Oh boy.
For more shows like this one, visit rockcandyrecordings.com.